So we just got done watching the developer live update regarding the changes that are going to be coming in season 3. And while we do not have patch notes, what we got is a lot more about like overarching ideologies, approaches to how they want to be balanced in the game, handling game balance, and a lot of information about what's coming in this season. And unironically here, this isn't just like me like trying to like choke down a whole boot. There's a ton of content coming in season 3. That's probably what I'm most excited for. Balance changes are balance changes. It shakes up the meta. Certain builds, become S tier and we get to make cool videos about it. But realistically, what I get to do in the game that's different from the last season is ultimately what keeps us coming back. So what I want to try to do here is go like super high level, very quick, what you need to know from this dev stream so you don't have to watch the entirety of it if you're not interested in doing that. But I do recommend watching it just because, one, the people that they had on were absolutely phenomenal. They brought back my absolute favorite, Adam Jackson, be able to go over class changes, etc. But I highly recommend watching because everybody there was just incredibly knowledgeable, and the information that they gave wasn't just about like, hey, what's coming, but also insight into why it's coming. And I think that's very valuable. But let's go ahead and speedrun this so that you're not like bored to death and you basically get the entirety of what you need to understand. First and foremost, we're going to have a cool little pet. That cool little pet is a little spider monster that we unlock by doing the seasonal journey. And you're not going to need to unlock like certain parts of things. You can just go throughout the quest now, as opposed to having to have completed like season journey level 3, which is a really great change. Once you unlock the little pet, you're going to be able to find stones, governing stones, and tuning stones. Governing stones are the different skills that it can use. Tuning stones are modifiers of those skills. So think about it in the same way that Torchlight Infinite has it. Think it in the same way that PoE has your linked armor with your skill in it, and then like passive gems and support gems, etc., like that. So it is. You pick 2 different skills that they can use. One can be a lightning bolt, one can be a ray of fire, one can be a melee attack, one can be a barrier generation, one can heal you, one can put down a cool field that's going to stop projectiles. And then you might be able to add on additional duration or shorter cooldown or apply lightning damage and the ability to stun. So you can modify them the way that you want. You're seeing some of that gameplay footage now. How do you find these stones? Well, you're going to run the new content called vaults. Vaults are these cool little mini dungeons that are actually attached to a new hub area. Let me go ahead and find a picture of that because the hub area actually looks pretty sick. So here they're currently running through the hub area. You'll notice that there are basically everything that you need. You have an occultist, except the occultist is a cool little robot now. We basically have a market basket version of Deckard Cain named Ayujan, who apparently worked with Zoltan Cool in the past, and he's going to make all these cool little robots for us. And then down in the hub itself are going to be the different vaults. The cool part about the vaults is that it's not just like go and kill a bunch of enemies. There's going to be traps in the vaults as well. And your ability to dodge these traps is going to be directly related to how much loot you get at the end of the vault. So here you're actually inside of the vault itself. You have all these different traps on the ground, and this, sorceress is trying to get over to some loot that they opened up in a chest. But you have these spinning fire geysers as well as these flame plates on the ground, and literally avoiding these is going to maintain a buff that you keep on yourself. And the more of the buff that you have when you get to the end of the vault, the more of that loot that you're going to get. And then let's go ahead and find Malphas himself. Here, Malphas is going to be a brand new type of boss where he's completely stationary. It looks like he's going to be summoning traps and doing attacks himself. And then he also summons these little pyres, and as you can see them, or these pylons rather, and it looks like they have health bars that you're going to have to hit to deactivate. So whether that's pushing him to the next part of the phase so you can actually deal damage to him again, it's a little bit left to be seen here. But it's a really cool concept. Right now, this boss isn't going to enter the endgame ladder of bosses. You're not going to need to farm this to be able to get materials for something else. It is specifically in the vaults themselves. We're going to go ahead and get these stones that are going to put into your robot. And again, it's going to manipulate them in some way. You can level them up. So by getting same versions of the same stone, that gives them experience that continues to increase the benefits that they give you. And basically, this little robot is either supposed to be like a decent amount of damage for you and your build. So we know that they are not considered minions, but they receive 100% of your stats. So theoretically, if you have a 100% chance to crit, they have a 100% chance to crit. So it seems like you will be able to stack them and actually scale their damage in a meaningful way, or you can just make them these little buff bots that just empower you to be stronger or apply things like vulnerable or poison status or shadowed status to be able to activate the skills. And I have a whole video coming for like wacky things I think you'll be able to do with this, but I'll leave that to after this one because that's not what you're here for. I've been talking more and more about like getting additional benefits from the vaults themselves. What do you need to do to get those additional benefits? How do I get this buff? How do I keep it stacked? Well, you need to go to the Overworld, and they are replacing Blood Harvest with a new type of Overworld effect, which are these Arcane Tremors that also include these little mini battles. So I'll pull up that video here. So areas of the map will basically be infected with these raids from down below where the constructs are erupting out of the ground. We have two different types of icons here. One, you're going to find these pylons that you have to go to and collect reagent from them. So this is similar to finding the blood lures to be able to activate different parts in Blood Harvest from Season 2. And then coming over to this icon type, you'll actually drop them in and you will summon a boss along with a small smattering of additional elite monsters, which is called the Scion or the Herald of Malphas. So again, like very, very similar to the Blood Harvest. It doesn't seem to be at the same scale as a Blood Harvest though. So as we go through it and actually see the combat itself, you'll be fighting some small monsters within the area to be able to get the actual things themselves. And then here they're actually picking up the reagent after like deactivating this pylon. And then when you actually drop them all into the brazier, you'll eventually spawn basically a pit lord, right? It's the big horn dude with the big sword who's going to breathe fire on you. And here he is, he's summoned, you kill him, and that's where you're going to get a Pearl of Warding. Pearl of Warding is what you use to juice vault maps. So if you go, hey, I got 10 pearls on me, I want to be able to walk into this thing with 30 stacks, you'll be able to get the maximum bonus as long as you get to the end of the vault with a certain number of those. Now, it looks like you can't just infinitely juice here. I can't just go like power farm 100 of these pearls, get myself 300 stacks, and then go get a chest at the end equal to 300 stacks. It looks like there's a maximum cap, and being willing to input more pearls basically means you get to screw up more times throughout the vault. They made it very clear that basically there's like a maximum threshold of what the total loot you'll get out of the chest is. But even if you were to somehow lose all of your buffs, running the vault is bare minimum going to get you at least one chest, which is going to have a decent amount of loot in it. And then every other chest in the vault, so like just like random caches and poppable items and stacks around it, all seem super juiced as well. Like to open up a single chest that's kind of like on the way to the end, and it dropped a waterfall of gold on the ground. So it looks like in general, the vaults are going to be really good places for like gearing, getting crafting materials possibly, as well as gold, and then to be able to get the things that you need for your robot. And then the robot is going to be however effective the robot is. Without more information, we can't get too specific about it. But that's basically everything that you need to know about that. In addition to that, they're going to release the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet's going to release about 3-ish weeks into the season. I don't think we have an exact date, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere basically like 2 to 3 weeks in. The Gauntlet is going to drop, and the Gauntlet is the official first leaderboard in-game system that's going to give us an ability to compete against others across a spectrum of filters, so you never feel like you're getting scammed by not playing with a group or only against different rogues or hardcore versus softcore or console. You can basically filter the leaderboard in whatever way you want. In addition to that, you can look at just your friends on the leaderboard, and you can look at just your clan mates on the leaderboard, which I think is like a super great addition to the in-game community play experience of this game. Like leaderboards are fine. Me racing against, 1,000 other people that I have no idea who they are is all well and good for my own bragging rights. But it's really cool when you get to be like, oh, me, Dan, Michelle are all going to be playing this weekend and see how far we can push in the Gauntlet. We can see where we rank up. I love that idea. So let's go ahead and look at what the UI looks like. And then we got a little bit of gameplay for what the Gauntlet basic premise and loop is going to look like. Basic content of the Gauntlet is basically all you need to do is be in World Tier 4. There's no payment to get in, and it's not going to drop loot for you, but you're going to walk in and you can see right off the bat, it just starts with the boss. But if you look more closely, you have a timer and a score. The entire purpose of running the Gauntlet is to get the max score to be able to be on the leaderboard. You're going to rank up through your ability to get onto the leaderboard. So think like bronze, silver, and gold rank here before you can do your progression or do your placement matches to actually get onto the legit leaderboard. But even just getting those like 3 or whatever intermediary ranks, they're called seals, you're going to be able to like pimp out your profile a little bit. There's going to be a cool icon that you can put on your character that basically says like, hey, I ranked gold. Isn't that cool? But what you can see is that the idea of this dungeon is that it has a static layout. It will reset once a week. It will have the exact same seed for where monsters are and where these cool new pylons are. And the entire idea is how many of these can you kill as quickly as possible? With this pylon that's right there actually resummoning monsters that you killed within range. So if you see the boss here, if you actually drag the boss to one of these pylons, kill the boss, pop the pylon, you can fight the boss again. And that boss will obviously be worth more score than the rest of the monsters. In addition to that, and they didn't touch on it too specifically, but it does look like there will be things that you can actually capture within the dungeon itself. So like little mini objectives or chests, and being able to pick basically how you run the dungeon, how you get through it, what your strategy and what your actual pacing through it was, is going to determine what the meta for that week looks like. On the leaderboard itself, you'll be able to inspect players' profiles to see what they had going on, how they built out their character, what they're using to be able to get the score that they are, which is a phenomenal feature that I basically just want to see across the board in Diablo 4. I think it's one of the best things in Diablo 3 is basically like, hey, what's the best player right now doing on this build? So you can go take a look at it and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I have some of those items, or, oh, I didn't think about using those aspects. Again, just like helping to reinvest in the community's ability to interact with one another. Phenomenal choice, 10 out of 10. Just add that functionality across the board in every single thing that we do in the game as far as I'm concerned. But Mac, what's the point of running the Gauntlet? Is gear going to rain from the sky? Am I going to get all my Uber uniques? No, silly. It's for honor. It is for pure ego. It is for pure bragging points, because the top 10 people every single week per Gauntlet is going to be moved to a Hall of Fame that is forever. While the Gauntlet itself and the leaderboards themselves are going to reset every week, the top 1,000 runners, you'll be able to check them out, check out their scores, see when they completed it, etc. Again, be able to inspect them. But the top 10 players are going to be moved to an eternal leaderboard that's going to be maintained that you can see forever. So let's say they start this 3 weeks into any one of the seasons, right? This season in particular. It basically gives us 9 weeks of rotating top 10 leaderboards. That means that you can get your name on this leaderboard 9 times during this season and be immortalized forever. This is a very weird statement from me, because I don't typically go this hard in these video games. Like, I'm a speedrunner for Diablo 2. I push world first Ubers and world first Hellbale kill. I pushed world first 99 in Diablo 2 multiple times, multiple seasons in a row. But I don't ever personally really go for these types of things, just because I have so much stuff I need to get done. I work for Maxroll, I have my own content that I create, etc. But I'm going to be going hammer on Necromancer for this season for the Gauntlet. So I'm promising you right now, I may not succeed, but I'm going to try to get top 10 every single week until the end of this season. So stay tuned for like how I'm doing that. If I actually manage to break into it, obviously I'll be making videos covering my builds and kind of my approach to what I'm doing for it. I'll try to get those up as soon as possible, just so that other people can kind of try their hand at it if they're really interested in it. But this is like the super healthy version of what the Abattoir of Zir kind of was, right? It didn't have any real leaderboards. Maxroll was maintaining a leaderboard, so at least people could submit to that. But this is like a just in-game, what you're doing, straight up evaluation of how good of a strategy you came up with. And I'm incredibly excited for this, especially in a game like an ARPG, where after the first month, there's not really a lot of investment to continue play if you're not somebody who's looking to min-max every single piece of gear, right? I did everything. I did the season's journey, I got all my cosmetics, I got my character to level 100, I played the builds I wanted to play. I really don't have anything else to do. This gives me something to come back to every single week. And even if you fail one week, you get to try again the next one. So I'm hyper stoked about this. I'm going to cut this now because I've just been gushing about it. But I'm really excited for the Gauntlet and what it means and how it's going to reward players for legit just being good at the game or being willing to try something interesting to see if you can mess with whatever the meta is at that point. So that's like super primo as far as I'm concerned. It also looks like they're going to be simplifying a lot of what the season's journey is and taking out some of the ones that were just like kind of stupid in all honesty. Like, one of them was go out and kill 10 people in PvP zones. One, in hardcore, that's just kind of a death sentence, depending on what your build is, etc. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to have to do PvP to be able to push the actual progression forward. And while you don't have to do every single thing in the season's journey, there are a lot of people who are completionists and like to be able to do everything in a thing because, you know, kind of what else are they doing? In addition to that, just like real quick little sneak peek here, they're currently on progression tier 4, and the cache that they're opening up says that it is going to give them scattered prisms, shattered stone, and pearls of warding. So shattered stone are the materials that you need to be able to craft the stones for your robot. Pearls of warding are the things I was explaining, so you can put the buff on you so you can get better rewards from the vault itself. And then also 925 item ancestral legendary items. So just the rewards from the season's journey are just significantly better than they were before, because other than the aspects that you got from them and maybe some of the cosmetics or vanity things, they just kind of sucked, in all honesty. So it's really nice to see that like this cache, even at tier 4, legit just says kind of everything that you want. GG, here you go. Another great choice there. So we got to look into what the actual season's blessings for season 3 are going to include. So here, obviously, we're going to get the XP reward. I think that one's going to be basically par for the course, you know, just season after season after season. 2 Helltide chests are going to drop additional equipment, and that equipment will always be a legendary get back here video. The third one being that the duration of shrine effects is going to be boosted. So that's kind of interesting. That would have been like pretty sick back in Abattoir of Zir. So I'm just wondering if there are going to be even more shrines and things like the Gauntlet that are going to impact your ability to be successful at generating like the maximum score. So maybe this has a bit more of a use, but even just like having a longer conduit on weaker builds, especially in the early game, is just kind of nice here. Then you'll be receiving additional tuning stones whenever you open up the chests that require you to use the Pearls of Warding. And then lastly, boosting Whisper rewards even further, which is pretty cool. I think Tree of Whispers in Season 2 was a phenomenally stronger system than it was previously, with a lot more gold, a lot more rewards in general, and being able to more often get a greater collection. So the like legendary colored, you know, super chests that just give you more of everything, a higher chance of that happening. Another great option there. And then we got to my chat's favorite dev for Diablo 4, Adam Jackson, and Adam Jackson actually gave us a ton of insight into very high level what their approach is going to be for balance and buffs and nerfs and what we can expect walking into season 3. We'll have the patch notes tomorrow, so obviously I'll be doing a deep dive there, but I just want to go slideshow frame by frame so just so you can see it very quickly, so you don't necessarily need to listen to me yammer on, and I'll just give you some insights whenever I remember something that they said in particular that was useful for you to know. So the first thing for the Barbarian class, and they don't go in alphabetical order, so like this isn't me just like choosing to skip around, I'm sorry. First and foremost, big improvements to charge. You know that skill that they added on like a bunch of fun aspects for, and you get to run around with all of your like linebacker buddies hitting stuff? Apparently they've gone a little bit nutty with the scaling here, and just to give you an idea, they actually showed us the damage. So between season 2 and season 3, the base damage is going from 1200 to 12,000. That's a factor of 10. They added a 0 onto the end of this thing for the base damage. Now, there are aspects that you can get up to like 200 to 400 multiplicative damage on this, and this is a base attack that isn't critting and not overpowering. So there's a world where Charge Barbarian is the meta, and I'm super here for it. They're also going to be giving additional buffs to the key passives like Walking Arsenal, basically the more underused ones, so that you're more incentivized to try out different things other than just being a super overpowered Hoda Barb. And then they're also making some adjustment to shouts so that you do not feel as if you have to use all 3 shouts, and you can mix and match shouts, only use one, or maybe still use all 3 if you want to, but not have it be a necessity. I just want to get out of the way of this awesome infographic here because Barb stonks go up. This is great. That being said, they overplayed this joke a little bit too much. The stonks character is going to make a return for every single class. I mean, if you got a good joke, definitely use it. But this is just their idea of like where major buffs are coming and what you should kind of expect to explore in this season. For the Sorcerer, they know that there are a lot of different scenarios, especially when trying to apply Vulnerable. People are looking for ways to be able to build a class that they don't feel as restricted to those skills. So they're going to make it so that Lightning Spear, when it crits, also applies Vulnerable. So now you have another avenue for being able to mix up your skills to be able to actually get that damage multiplier onto your kit. They're also going to be bringing some Nebulous buffs to the Paragon Legendary nodes that we didn't really get any more info on. And then most notably, they're looking to change up Meteor in a pretty specific way. And we actually have footage for what the new Meteor unique item looks like. So we'll get more into detail there, but just kind of playing up and feeding into builds that aren't just ball lightning and haven't just been like the pretty typical meta sorceress options, so that people have more room to explore. For the Rogue, again, a little bit nebulous here, but they said they want to give buffs to underused skills and skill upgrades. Basically know that everybody's just kind of playing rapid fire twisting blades with poison imbuement, and they want to give other skills, most notably the range skills, more tools to play with, as well as giving buffs to all of the ranged unique items, which according to the rogues in my life that I know, Woody and Dioxide are just kind of never good enough. And I'm interested to see what they could possibly add to these unique items, because they seem to touch them every season, or at least that's what it feels like as an outsider Necro player. First and foremost, for the Druid, they're buffing Thorns damage. So Prickle Skin used to say 300 damage, and now it's going to say 1200 damage. I don't think that's going to do anything, but I don't play Druid. Maybe that's enough. Maybe, hey, you know what? Basically 4x multiplier on your Thorns Spirit Boon. Maybe that's good enough for your character. They're also going to be giving a new legendary and a buff to the enhanced rabies modifier. So just rabies, the skill in general, not necessarily always getting the most love, but here they're looking to buff it, and it seems fairly significantly. Oh, and this was the other interesting one. They said that there's a whole new unique item coming just for Stormclaw, and I think we actually get to take a look at it, which is pretty sick, but also look forward to like a Stormclaw meta potentially, because if Adam Jackson's saying they're buffing something and including them in an infographic, that's typically what ends up being strong. And obviously the only thing that anybody watching my content cares about, myself included, the Necromancer changes. So we don't, again, this is not an exhaustive list. We don't know every single thing that's coming, but they touched on some very specific points. One, if you have played the Necromancer, you may know that the Bone Golem is actually the only one who can effectively deal damage, because the Bone Golem's base attack is a cleave, so it hits everything in front of it, whereas the Iron Golem and the Blood Golem only do singular target melee attacks. So every single golem is now going to have a cleave attack, basically making it so that the Bone Golem is now just a taunt machine, and you will only ever end up using Iron Golem and Blood Golem unless they do something significant to buff it in a different way. A little bit of quality of life here for Bone Prison. If you're friendly to it, you can just run through it. You don't have to evade into and out of your own Bone Prison. Your minions can run through your Bone Prison again. And while this is no longer really an issue because we're not using Bone Prison for lucky hit chance, but this is one of like the biggest pain points for Mendeln Necromancers in the past, where you would Bone Prison onto the target, but then your minions would either get stuck with it or stuck outside of it and just couldn't hit it. And at least now they'd be able to freely run through it, which also means that Bone Prison in general is just like edging up there towards a universe where it's actually viable to use it and have it be worth more than the headache of managing Bone Prison. Because I think one of the worst things about Bone Prison is that it's on the ground and it interrupts your ability to play the game effectively. You have to waste evades to get into and out of it. You have to remember to like immediately cast it again to be able to break it down proactively. And if Bone Prison is just like strictly bad for your enemies and strictly good for you, we're getting to a point where I'll probably end up experimenting with it depending on what else they change about this skill. But most notably, they're going to be changing the worst aspect that's in the game currently, and that is the Bone Spirit offensive aspect. So let's go ahead and look at the graphic because it paints a really good picture of just how trash this aspect was to begin with. Swelling Curse used to say that Bone Spirit dealt up to 25% bonus damage depending on how far it traveled. The only way to play Bone Spirit is as a shotgun build. You literally have to be in the face of an entire pack of pixel-pulled monsters, be able to do enough damage to enough targets to make Bone Spirit do anything at all. Nobody was ever Hail Mary Drew Bledsoeing this Bone Spirit from downtown. You didn't do that. It was ridiculous. Nobody has ever used this aspect because it was complete trash. Now what it says though, and this is very interesting, is that Bone Spirit can gain up to 25% critical strike chance, just boom, done. And then your maximum essence is increased by 2 for each enemy hit for 15 seconds. Wild. Let's talk about what this means, and let's use a couple different examples, right? So one, an offensive aspect just saying Bone Spirit gains 25% crit, meaning if you put it on a two-hander, 50% crit, or if you were to put it onto an amulet, 37.5% chance to crit, basically means even at really low level, you'll be able to reach 100% chance to crit with just this, an aspect of Grasping Veins in your skill tree, and kind of nothing else really. Add on Bone Storm for 20%, and we're talking about 85% chance to crit, plus your 5 base, so 90% chance to crit with no other gear on. That is phenomenal, because any time that you do not successfully crit with a Bone Spirit means you basically didn't cast the skill at all. What it also means is that you're not as tied to the crit chance that you get from your skill tree based off of how much essence that you have, meaning that you can cast Bone Spirit at a lower essence total. You won't get the full bonus damage of it, but you know you will crit. So now you can actually change up your gameplay style to start doing like minimum amounts of damage with Bone Spirit that you either do or do not know will be able to kill the monsters in front of you. And a little bit of gameplay experience will let you know, it's like, oh, okay, I have a third of my essence orb. I know that we'll be able to kill this elite monster in the content that I'm doing right now. So I can rip this off right now as opposed to having to get all my essence together. So just the increased crit chance is like already nice enough to be able to get the build online sooner, but it opens up a gameplay style of Bone Spirit that you don't typically see unless you're using Blood Artisan's Cuirass, which is casting Bone Spirit more than once every 6 seconds. So that's already pretty sick. The second part is I can't, I'll be like, I know this seems overly dramatic. I can't possibly understand what the top end potential of this is. Let's think about being in Domhain tunnels, dopamine tunnels, the place where everybody goes to speed farm, right? The density in there is insane. Let's say I were to corpse tendrils in 10 enemies and then hit them with the Bone Spirit. That means that I'm going to gain 20 maximum essence. Just on Bone Spirit alone, that is a 60% damage multiplier increase on top of your previous damage multiplier. So it's not directly a 60% increase in damage, but it's taking your 600% damage bonus if you're at max essence and bringing it up to 660, right? So it's a 10% damage increase minimum kind of across the board. What if there's more monsters? What if this continues to stack and the buff just keeps saying adding on more maximum essence for 15 seconds? It probably won't work like that. It would be pretty nutty. What I think will actually happen is that the buff will be triggered. You will have that amount, and at the end of 15 seconds, that will run out. And then the next time you were to cast Bone Spirit, you will get it again. Or maybe it will refresh every single time that you hit a target, meaning that you make the decision like, oh, right before I get to a boss, I'm going to bring all of the monsters up to them, kill 30 monsters altogether, let all the spiderlings spawn, whatever, and then walk into the boss with upwards of an additional 60 maximum essence, which is an additional 180% damage multiplier on Bone Spirit, and then walk up and one-shot the boss, get done, get bent. This aspect went from actually the worst aspect in the game to something that is completely nutty, and that's phenomenal. Not only that, just like increasing your maximum essence makes it so that when you use Bone Storm, it will do more damage. When you use Bone Splinters, it does more damage. Maybe you're a hybrid Bone Spirit, Bone Spear Necromancer, and you get everything grouped up together. You Bone Spirit them one time with a rank 1 just to trigger this. And now your Bone Spear is walking around with an additional 60 additional maximum essence, gaining you additional damage multipliers from ossified essence, gaining you additional crit chance, gaining you additional multiplier from your aspects. Maybe. That might actually be hilariously interesting to do, and look forward potentially to a hybrid Bone Spear, Bone Spirit Necro from your boy right here. Now, I could jump all the way to the end where he kind of talks about it, but I do just want to touch on something because I know a lot of people always ask about it, and it's like, hey, Mac, what about minions? Basically, Adam Jackson said, we still do not know exactly what route we want to take with minions, so we don't have anything to report right now. But he did allude to there being additional damage buff like number changes coming in Season 3's balance patch. So while they're changing functionality of golems themselves, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another buff to like mage damage or the warrior damage, or maybe a change to the Paragon board or something like that. Because he does literally just say we are doing number changes for right now. And since we haven't seen them yet, it makes me believe that we will see some once the patch notes drop tomorrow. So at the very least, probably some amount of like useful damage stat increases. I don't think that that's going to change minions in any significant way, but at least we know they know that we're waiting and they're sorry that they haven't done anything about it. You could see it in his face when he's describing it. He's basically like, yep, sorry, yep, we know, and we'll get to it. So now we're going to get into the Meteor unique for the Sorceress, so we can kind of take a look at that and what the stats are. So very quickly to pause, we're getting the Starfall Coronet. It's going to give maximum life, cooldown reduction, +4 ranks to Meteor, and lucky hit chance. An absolutely disgusting amount of lucky hit chance, actually. That thing's pretty nutty. So the +4 skill ranks, the cooldown reduction, the maximum life means that you can legitimately use this over Shaco, which is pretty cool. An insane amount of lucky hit chance. And now what it's going to do is basically take the Meteor skill and stop it from costing mana and turn it into a cooldown skill. So it will have charges that their cooldown resets over a small amount of time. So like the minimum is 6 seconds here. And whenever you cast Meteor, it's going to drop 3 additional meteors around it. And then the Meteor's enchantment effect and enhanced Meteor drop 1 additional meteor. So you can get up to 5 meteors dropping every single time, and basically be able to spam this 3 times in a row and then have to wait for the cooldown. So again, Meteor is going to become significantly stronger, but become a cooldown skill as opposed to a mana cost skill. So drastically changing up what it looks like on the Sorceress skill bar and what the gameplay loop is going to look like. But just to watch the video very quickly, it's like pretty sick watching all these multiple meteors come down. Like this is, I mean, it's beautiful. Honestly, I think like the gameplay speaks for itself, but that looks very cool. I'm excited for sorceresses to be able to explore other skills that aren't just the ones that we've been seeing all of Season 2. But then we're also going to take a look at the Stormclaw unique for the Druid. So here we have Aesthetic Wraps. You're going to get crit chance, lightning storm ranks, Defiance passive ranks, as well as a huge amount of lucky hit chance too. And then Lightning Storm is going to gain 1 additional strike each time that it grows. And then when Lightning Storm critically strikes, more lightning bolts are going to strike twice, dealing increased damage. And the gameplay here makes me incredibly jealous of Druid players because this looks insane. Like, that's cool as hell. I'm not all of a sudden going to go play Druid at season start because I got to work on the Necromancer. But the gameplay here is just like, that's satisfying. That's what we wish, Thunderstorm on a Lightning Sork was in Diablo 2, and we never got it. So shoutouts to Druid. That looks like pretty insane. The Druid players in my chat were going pretty nuts when they saw that. And Druid might be the second class I try out this season since I'm going to have more time. So here we got into the ideology of what they basically want to do moving forward for class balance and how they want to handle nerfs and buffs and bug fixes, because they basically have 2 ideas. 1, people want to be able to play the powerful things that they find and not ruin that for them. But 2, people hate when the meta grows stale and they feel very forced into certain builds. Ball Lightning, Hoda Barb, as well as the double dip shred, Druid that we saw at the end. And while it's cool, they don't want it to be oppressive. They give us a couple of different ideas here, but Ball Lightning enchantment is just like too much damage, and that's a bug. Rogue getting additional combo points from using Condemnation and Tybalt's Will, that's a bug. Rogue Twisting Blades with Poison imbuement. This is something that Dioxide had pointed out before. I don't know the specifics of it. I don't play Rogue. I'm sorry. But apparently that's bugged and doing too much damage. Druid's Blurred Beast, double dipping on the damage. The thing I just spoke on and was wrong about. That was a bug. Violent Hammer of the Ancients just always applying even when you didn't put it on, just meaning that Barbarians, when they were using Hoda, had an additional 30% damage multiplier. That's a bug. And the last one, not really a bug, but Overpower is just too strong in general. Basically, they said that when they fixed Overpower, which they did in a pretty good way, if my opinion matters here, it was just too strong and they want to tone it down. My issue here being that I think that the multipliers for classes for Overpower are the real issue here. And I don't think that like Blood Necros are over here at the top of the AOZ leaderboards, right? So whatever they do to nerf Overpower, I think is going to have negative downstream effects on Blood Necros. So I hope that we also see buffs to accompany that. Else, like, Barbs and Druids might get pulled into line a little bit, and the Necro would just get screwed, but like, that's kind of par for the course, honestly. So they give us this little bit of a roadmap. Basically, they want to see, at the start of the season, pretty big balance changes, what we're come to expect, but they also want to do a mid-season update, effectively halfway through, smack it dab in the middle, based off of player feedback a little bit, right? So if they're like, oh, it's not really a problem, like it is a bug, but like people are just generally enjoying it, whatever, maybe it doesn't make the cut, maybe they don't actually change it. But they want to start doing some type of rebalance in the middle of the season, which will just generally refreshen things. We'll be able to explore, like as the meta changes, because they made these changes, like this build became better now all of a sudden, or this one, the tier list will change, right? I think in general, that just kind of keeps the game more active and more robust throughout a season, where you typically see a lot of drop off, especially after about a month. So basically, what a season launch update will look like, it'll look like adding the new legendaries and the new uniques that are coming in that season, balance and design updates for the classes. So again, what we were typically kind of expecting, a lot of buffs, hopefully a few nerfs, and then major bug fixes here. And then on top of that, reinvestigating some of the systems. So drop rates, whether or not Helltide is being successful, whether or not, monsters in dungeons are doing the correct amounts of damage, et cetera, et cetera. So like those more meta defining systems, as opposed to just looking at the balance of the characters themselves. And then big major changes. So in season 2, we saw resistance and damage buckets. In season 3, we're seeing the addition of leaderboards. In season 4, we're seeing itemization. There's not always going to be some like massive game changing, mega overhaul, because theoretically we get to a point where the game is basically as good as it's going to get. And we just want to see meta changes at that point. But when big things are needed and they're ready to launch, they want to put them out. So it might not be every season, but these are still going to be at the launch of a season. For the mid-season patch, we're basically seeing a smaller or condensed version of this. So with the addition of the Malignant Rings coming back in season 2, this is this idea of like previous seasonal concepts coming back in some way. It's not always going to be unique. It might be an aspect. It might be changing out passives in the skill tree. It might be tweaks to the Paragon board. But basically bringing back things that worked really well and finding evergreen ways of reincorporating them into permanent systems in the game, so that they're not overbroken, they're not ridiculous, but they're bringing back those different like quality of life or gameplay loops that we were really enjoying from our previous experience. And then here, my head's blocking a little bit of it, but basically a much smaller version of the balancing. So maybe some buffs to different things that are underperforming, maybe or maybe not even some nerfs, and then critical bug fixes. These might be nerfs, they might be buffs, right? Like, oh, this thing isn't working, now it does. Or this thing is working way too good, now it isn't. And bug fixes, I think, ultimately should typically be good for a game, and people shouldn't necessarily get upset when they happen. It may very well lead to your class being nerfed in some way or your class being buffed in some way. And what they basically want to do is be able to communicate this early so that people know it's coming, so you can choose to stop farming for that build or start working into a different build if it was one you weren't going to explore because, you know, we knew it was weak or we knew it had a bug, whatever. So these are going to be coming. They're going to be smaller, typically hoping to just kind of buff stuff. But if it does have to nerf something, if it is going to be a bug fix, which is going to negatively impact the player experience, then at least it should be communicated. And a lot of what they covered here was just being able to communicate more, which, you know, is basically what we're always asking for. And I think they have proven time and time again that they're getting better at doing and continuing to strive to always be better at it. So like, big shout outs to the team. I super appreciate that. They are going to restart the like support a streamer campaign for I think it's the first month of season 3. So if you're somebody who likes to collect the cosmetic mounts in the game, they're going to add a new mount that you can get by giving out 2 gift subs or subbing and giving out a gift sub to your favorite streamers or across multiple streamers. If you saw this at the beginning of the launch of the game, it was a pretty big success. I think a lot of people enjoyed it because generally people like to be philanthropic, but on top of that, it's always nice to get a treat for when you do that. So it looks like they're also opening it up to anybody who streams Diablo 4. So if you've been making content for Diablo 4 and you didn't make the cut the last time, or if you weren't able to apply to be able to be part of that program, it looks like as long as you're streaming Diablo 4, you'll get it. Kind of like just drops in general typically work for games. And again, it's 2 gift subs or subbing once and giving out a gift sub, and then you get a cool horse. It's got a cool little thing on its head. If I'm being completely sincere with you, I wish this horse looked cooler. Maybe it looks really sick in game. I honestly thought this was like the old horse that we had already seen. So, you know, like, don't spend money you're not comfortable spending. That's all I'll say there. Maybe make the horse look a little bit cooler. I don't know. If you like the horse, I'm not here to harsh your mellow. Like, I'm going to give away 2 gift subs because I like to support people as often as I can with my platform. But on top of that, I'm a sick hoarding completionist and I need to have every single cosmetic or I'll die. But yeah, so that's basically it. I tried to cut it down. Wow, that is a long recording. Hopefully it was a lot of dead time and I can cut it out. But also this was like over a 2-hour stream. So I've at least hopefully cut it down to like a third for you. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Obviously, patch notes are dropping tomorrow, so we'll be able to get into the nitty-gritty of the exact changes that we're looking forward to. We'll start doing tier list updates. We'll start doing build guide updates. I'll start putting out theory crafts for what builds I think are going to be really good for the Necromancer. I think Season 2 kind of gave us a really good idea of how to more appropriately theory craft with the powers that are coming into a game. So I think Season 3 will be even more dead on with what we expect to be really good. But let me know down in the comments. I'd really appreciate to hear from you. As always, if you haven't already or if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That's just the best. It's the best way to help me out, honestly. It costs nothing. You click the button and then you know when I put out videos. It kind of seems like a win-win. Also throw a like onto the video if you enjoyed the way that I delivered the information, or if you just think that like more nerds should see this info before the patch notes drop so they have some better context for everything. But as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope that it helps and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.